Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, to another fishing trips and tackle. So I just got back from New Mexico and I caught my personal best rainbow trout twice in about 15 minutes. So I was fishing in the Cimarron Canyon. We'd fished the river the day before, caught a few trout, ate them, they were pretty good. Next day we decided to go to this little lake where the river kind of splits. The river keeps going, but then they also have some water that goes into a small lake called Gravel Point Lake, kind of like a big pond. It's a nice spot though. We fished there, never got any bites. The other people that were there, none of them were getting bites whatsoever. So the three guys I was with decided to go back to the river across the road, and I was kind of getting bored, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to stay here, fish a little bit longer, and then if I don't do any good, I'm going to walk back up to the cabin. It was only about half mile away. So they went to the river, and I walked the entire lake, fished every possible thing you could fish, never got a bite, and I noticed nobody else was getting bites either. There's one particular point of this lake where it's usually where the fish are the most active and people are usually at, and nobody was catching fish. Well, I ended up at the complete opposite of that, kind of in a cove. And I sat down on a bench they had there, and I decided I'm just going to go. I'm just going to walk back to the cabin, maybe take a little nap, wait for my traveling companions to get back from the river. Sit down, and then I normally, I get like a little Panther Martin spinner, a pretty small size. I'd say a 16th or maybe an 1/8 ounce, probably 16th. Or I'll just get a small hook with some Berkeley power bait or something. I've never really got anything big. Because you got a trout's mouth's pretty small. Generally speaking, if you're fly fishing, you're just using little flies on top, and unless you find some massive trout, usually you don't use real big lures. So I opened my tackle box and I pulled out a spoon, a little blade that I had bought at this same place like 5 years ago and never used it. And it was a 1/6 ounce spoon, a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger than I would normally throw, and I thought, they're not going to bite this, but hey, what the heck. So threw out there, made a couple casts. It looked to me like it was not working properly, but I wasn't sure. All of a sudden, this front started to blow in, and it wasn't raining yet, but it was looking rainy. And all of a sudden, the fish started to get active right there where I was at, in that cove. Like, nobody else caught a fish in this entire next time frame I'm getting ready to talk about. But I happened to notice I got a couple bites as I was just reeling in that spoon slowly, and it was just kind of spinning. And then I had my polarized sunglasses on right here, and when I got my lure back a little bit close to the bank, I realized there's like 6 trout attacking it, trying to get it, but they weren't getting hooked. So I threw back in the same spot, and I hooked one. And it was a pretty small one. I thought, oh, that's cool. And I ended up catching 2 or 3, just, 7 or 8 inch ones. They weren't very big. But man, I noticed there were some big ones swiping at it. And so at first I was getting frustrated because I kept catching small ones. But then eventually they started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I noticed that I could kind of throw over here, I could throw over here, I could throw here. But as long as I stayed in this one spot, the fish were schooling. And they were some kind of bait fish must have got into that cove. I'm not really sure, but the front I think had something to do with it. Well, all of a sudden I'm yanking out big trout. Now, big is relative. From my experience, a 12 or 13 inch trout is a pretty good trout. And they started to have a little bit more meat on their bones and be a little bit bigger. And nobody else is catching anything. So I've got this whole thing cornered. Well, all of a sudden I catch my PB. It was probably about 16 inch trout, and that pole bowed over. I was using an ultralight, and I forced it in probably too strong. I had 6-pound test on there. When it got close to the bank, I grabbed the line and just ran up the hill and just made sure it was in the grass. Caught it and took a few pictures with it, measured it, and I made a YouTube short. So if you saw the short that I made, you've already saw the pictures. And I think at this point, people are starting to notice this guy's catching fish. So they're starting to get a little closer to me and move in my direction. Well, then I caught, like 2 minutes later, an even bigger one, which was 18 inches long. And this one was fat. Like I couldn't get my hand around it. Like from its belly to its back was about that high. It was a big trout. I was holding it with two hands. I didn't weigh it, but I measured it. Well, I measured it on my arm. It was from my elbow to the tip of my middle finger, which is 18 inches. And the guy just happened to be walking up there with his wife. He says, "Hey, are you doing any good?" And I just kind of showed him that trout. He's like, "Holy cow! Wow, I didn't know they had trout like that in here." So that was pretty cool. And then I told him, I said, "You're welcome to fish right here beside me." And he ended up moving down a little bit and kind of went on the other side of the cove. I proceeded to catch another 7 or 8 nice trout. Not as big as that one, but nice trout. Ended up catching 12 right there, which the limit's 5. And I turned them all loose, but because we weren't going to eat trout again. We had something else planned. But caught 12 trout within about 35, 40 minutes. Broke my personal best twice. Had an absolute blast on one lure. All those fish on one lure. And it was just like, I'm going to throw one more lure out there at the very last second. Go big or go home. And then I was kind of getting bored. It was just lucky that I threw one more cast into the river, or into the lake. Now, having said that, I wish that I had my GoPro on. Every time I go fishing and I put my GoPro on, it's like a curse. I either don't do any good at all and I don't even make a video, or I do catch a few and I make a video and it's kind of mediocre. But man, that would have been awesome to have my GoPro on during that 30 minutes. That would have been really cool to see all those fish getting caught. Had a great time though. It was really cool. So that's got me wanting more of those lures. So I ordered some more lures and I'm going to show you that in a second. But I'm getting excited about trout fishing. All right, this is my trout box. It's just a whole lot of crap that needs cleaned out. Actually cleaned out down here. There's all kinds of junk down there. Old line and just even leaves and stuff. Usually when I go trout fishing, I use Berkeley power bait or some type of spinner. I've had good luck with both of those. Here's my little spinner box. It's mainly rooster tails, and no offense to rooster tail fan people, but a Panther Martin seems to work a lot better. It seems to spin even at slower speeds. The rooster tails get stuck. They don't spin. You got to kind of jerk them. Panther Martins tend to work better. But here is the lure. Like I said, 12 trout, including my PB, broke twice in the span of about 35 minutes, something like that. Fantastic lure. Didn't even know what it was. See how curved it is? But it is the Thomas Buoyant, 1/6 ounce. So, of course, I did the obvious. I went and bought 3 more. I bought these on eBay. I'm not even sure that this is a current, if they're still being manufactured. I'm not sure. I got a chartreuse. I got a brown trout, and then I got kind of a, actually that's the brown trout, and then I got kind of a gold color. So I've become a big fan of these. Yeah, it's clean. Tackle box is clean. Took it to the sink, rinsed it, dried it. Look what was in there. That was in the bottom of it. And all that's getting thrown away. It's either rusty metal or just soft plastics that need thrown away. I'm going to keep the stuff I can salvage. I'm going to clean this thing up. This is my little box that I kept my rooster tails in. They're all out. And by the way, they're nasty. I don't know if I should, what I should do with them yet, but this little box is disgusting. It needs to be cleaned. It might not look like it, but I've cleaned this thing. Clean this little box. I will throw this over my shoulder if I'm gonna wade or something. All the rooster tails I've put in this thing. I'm throwing those in my closet. I'm not using them. I don't know what I'll do with them, but they've failed me too many times. All right, much cleaner. I don't even know that I need these, but I've got those, got this, little bobber. I've got some of these jig heads. A few little tools I need there. Got a stringer, Berkeley power bait, and a filleting knife. But here's really where most of it is. Here's my little box that I take wading. It's mainly just those spoons that I like, Panther Martins, and a few Blue Foxes. Those are a little bit big, but I might find a spot for them. And just random assorted other jig heads, bunch of jig heads, bunch of spinners. Got these little flies, I think they're called Pistol Pete's or something like that. And then I've got a few normal hooks. So, it's all clean, feeling much better. Okay, so I got my tackle box all cleaned up. And there's several places here in Missouri. There's 3 or 4 places that I know of you can go catch trout. So I'm kind of getting excited about it. I'm not a fly fisherman. I just like to use a spinning reel, but I don't know, I'm kind of getting excited about catching trout. So stay tuned for that. Hope you've enjoyed this little story time and cleanup session, but hope you have a great day. Until next time, take care.